Welcome to The Sports Angle, live in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. I'm your host, Rachiele. Let's get into it. We're here with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk. Been a long time since we've had you come on the show. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and honestly, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. It always is. Sports Angle always keeps me on my toes.
Now, before we get into the Tennessee Titans discussion, for all the people here in Las Vegas, if you need information about the Titans, Volunteers, Predators, need that information about Tennessee sports, go to Tennessee Talk. I've been watching them, listening to them for a long time. They're very informational. Going to give that plug there. Now, getting into the Tennessee Titans, a lot of people know about the offense. They know about Derrick Henry. They've heard about Ryan Tannehill. And A.J. Brown has definitely turned into an elite wide receiver. But most people don't focus on the defensive side of the ball. And what weaknesses on that side do the Titans have, and which ones do they need to address right now?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. What weaknesses does that defense not have? I mean, secondary's weak. Pass rush by far is probably the weakest link on the defensive side of the football. But the thing is, you have pieces. You know, it wasn't that long ago that Kevin Byard was regarded as one of the top safeties in the league. And now all of a sudden, it's hard for me to believe that he just woke up, forgot how to play football. You know, he wasn't good last year. Secondary-wise, though, I mean, you have him. You cut Kenny Vaccaro. You've cut Malcolm Butler. You've got a lot of holes to fill. And right now, it's close, but I have to give the edge to the pass rush, but that secondary's got to be addressed as well.
The defensive line, which, you know, a lot of people just say, oh, they're there to go get the quarterback. Oh, they're there to stop the running back. But I've always believed that just like the offensive line, the defensive line doesn't get a lot of respect on that side of the ball. They have Jeffrey Simmons, very underrated guy in Tennessee. But what do you think they need to do on that defensive line? Like, what position do they need to fix the most, the defensive end or defensive tackle?
Yeah, it's definitely got to be defensive end. You know, Jeffrey Simmons is a very nice piece to have. And then years past, we've had him and Daquan Jones. Of course, Daquan Jones, who knows if he's going to be back or not. But you've got to get an edge rusher. You know, Titans haven't really had an elite edge rusher since Javon Curse, and that's been a long time ago. You know, you've had guys like Kyle Vanden Bosch who were good. Brian Orakpo several years back was good for the Titans. But you haven't really had that cornerstone guy that's really set the tone for the defense. And honestly, everybody was hoping Harold Landry was going to be that guy. But, you know, now heading into year 4, I don't think he's the guy. I think he's a great player. I think he's a quality guy to have, but he's not going to go out there and get those double-digit sacks like you need.
We're talking about the Tennessee Titans here on the Sports Angle. I'm your host, Rachiele. We're here with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk. You brought up the linebacking. They have Evans. They have Landry. They had Jadeveon Clowney. J.J. Watt, people thought was a really good player that could have come to Tennessee, including myself. I said on this show, J.J. Watt really should have come to Tennessee. But with that linebacking core, do they have a lot of pieces there that they can say, all right, we're set. We need to have this part not be addressed, or can they add some more depth there?
Yeah, I think they have to add more depth. You know, I think Rashaan Evans is a very quality player. However, I don't feel like he took a huge step forward this year. You know, he had a few good games, but other than that, he seemed to disappear at times. Jayon Brown's a free agent. Of course, whenever he was out due to injury, David Long stepped up. He looked like he's going to be a really good piece for this football team. But, I mean, then again, I don't see just that stud, just that guy that you know is going to be there to make a play. And I think Rashaan Evans can be that guy. I think maybe David Long can be that guy. But I think the Titans' biggest issue defensively is scheme. I just felt like last year we didn't really put players in positions to succeed because it wasn't that long ago, like I said, that Jayon Brown was considered one of the best linebackers in the league. And before he got hurt, he wasn't playing well at all. And Kevin Byard, same way. It's hard for me to believe that these guys all of a sudden just forgot how to play football. You know what I'm saying? And that's why a lot of people are so down on the Shane Bowen hire to be the defensive coordinator, considering he was the guy calling the plays last year. But you have pieces there. Now, I don't think one of those is that franchise player, that cornerstone, that Keith Bullock type guy that the Titans had a long time ago. But, you've got pieces. So you're in the right direction, but that defense has got to get fixed.
As we're talking about the Tennessee Titans here on the Sports Angle, I'm your host, Rachiele. We're here with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk. The defensive backs, I feel like Kevin Bayard had what I like to call getting the bag syndrome, where you get that money and all of a sudden that talent seems to just disappear out of nowhere. Kenny Vaccaro, Malcolm Butler, as you mentioned, no longer on the roster. Adoree Jackson, I've always wondered about him. So with Tennessee, with their defensive backs, could that be an option in the first round of the NFL draft, or do they need to go after something else?
Right. Yeah, I think in the first round that I'd almost put it up there with pass rusher, man. We're going one or the other, but definitely corner is a huge need for this team now. Adoree Jackson, man, he's a solid player, but last year he was hurt majority of the season, only played in like 5 games. And the problem with me is he didn't look nowhere near like himself during those 5 games, and I'm not trying to just have recency bias because he was bad, but he didn't look anything similar. And it's hard for me to know that that's our number one corner next year. And then with you cutting Malcolm Butler, you're trusting that Christian Fulton, the guy you drafted out of LSU in the second round last year, you're hoping he's able to take that big step. And I just don't think he's ready for it, honestly. I mean, that's a huge step. And then after that, behind him, rise of right now, it's Breon Borders because Desmond King's a free agent. You release Malcolm Butler. I think Amani Hooker is going to take over Vaccaro's role. Now, he's originally a free safety, so hopefully you hope he can transition to a strong safety. He was tied with Butler to lead the team with picks last year with 4. So I think you're okay there. But, I mean, there's holes there. And that's definitely an option in the first round. And then with Kevin Byard, man, he got paid. And like you said, he didn't show up. And I don't want to think it's the fact that he just isn't good. I honestly believe that it's the scheme.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned the scheme because there have been teams that like to do this swinging situation where a couple of plays they'll be running the 4-3, then the next couple of plays they'll run a 3-4. We've seen that in the NFL, but it doesn't work as often as some people like to assume. We've had teams do it and it just doesn't necessarily translate. With the Tennessee Titans, if they did have to go to the traditional either 3-4 or 4-3, what scheme would you want them to run and why?
Yeah, man, I honestly prefer the 3-4. I like the idea of, your 2 outside linebackers. You can drop them into coverage or you can bring them at the quarterback. And then there's just so many different things you can do in coverage there. A few years ago, we were really good about sending Logan Ryan on these cornerback blitzes. And, man, he led our team in sacks. Like that's crazy that a cornerback led the team in sacks. But there's just so much you can do out of the 3-4. But Mike Vrabel, like you said, you would think it would work, but it tends not to. And that's what Mike Vrabel wants to do. He said it multiple times here in Nashville. He wants to have front multiplicity with coverage consistency. Problem is, coverage hasn't been too consistent.
So as we're talking about the Tennessee Titans here on the Sports Angle, we're here with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk. I'm your host, Rocco Rachiele. Now, on this show, we do this with guests. We do this with callers. Now, we're here in Las Vegas. This is the sportsbook capital.
Right.
And the Tennessee Titans are 25-1. Do you think that they're too high, too low, or are they just right where they need to be?
Yeah. I'd say they're just right. Now, I could see a case where they should probably be a little lower, to be honest, where we're sitting right now. But you go on a deep run just a couple of years ago. The roster isn't too different. If you'd asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said that. But right now, it is really different, honestly. Now that I think about it, you've cut Malcolm Butler. He's gone. Vaccaro's gone. Adam Humphries is gone. Jayon Brown, he may not be back. Corey Davis may not be back. We don't have a tight end on the roster, So, we got to let free agency play out and the NFL draft. But right now, I'd say they're just about right. I don't think they're one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl, especially whenever you're in the AFC. You're always going to be looking at the Chiefs. The Buffalo Bills now look like they're that next team poised, ready to go to challenge the Chiefs. And then, even if you look at the NFC, Tampa Bay is still going to be a problem next year. Green Bay is going to be a problem. You're going to have teams that are I just think are clearly better than the Titans right
Well, we have about 2 minutes left before we go to break, and I'm going to ask, because I've seen your reactions on Tennessee Talk, and Noah McKay, who is the host alongside you on Tennessee Talk, if you draft an offensive tackle with your first round pick, is it going to be you or is it going to be him that flips the table and just walks off the set?
Let's be honest. It'll probably be him. He has such a stronger reaction immediately. Me, whenever something happens he don't like, he's more likely. For me, I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to be in awe. Like, did that seriously just happen? Like, did we? I'll probably, if we were live streaming, he's going to flip the table, watch off, and I'm just going to be standing there speechless. Like, I'm not going to say a word. But on the inside, man, I am freaking out.
And I'm not going to tell you to name a player because we have about 45 seconds left. But can you name me a position that you say with the first round pick, when Roger Goodell walks to the podium, they need to draft that right away?
Yeah, either cornerback or edge rusher, without a doubt.
This is The Sports Angle. I'm your host, Rocco Rachiele. We're here with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk. We're going to stay with our NFL conversation. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to The Sports Angle, live in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. I'm your host, Rachiele. Let's get back into it. We are here with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk. We talked about the Titans in the first segment, but there are plenty of teams in Tennessee. They're not the only one. The Nashville Predators, they were on that Stanley Cup run. They had that magical run a couple of years ago, but time has passed. Players have gotten older. Prospects have had to get called up. And what do you think Nashville's situation is right now? Because they're not bad, but they're not great either. Like, they're in that weird middle.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people here in the Nashville area are still, living like this is a team that went on that Stanley Cup run. And this team is not that anymore. They don't play at that level. And I don't see it coming back, at least not this year. And I think Nashville's in a stage now. I feel like the Predators, they're at a place where they need to rebuild, but they keep convincing themselves, no, we still got a shot. And I just think that's going to be the best move for them. Like, you're in a position to where, you thought UC Saros was going to develop into this stud goalie. I think it's evident that he's not. Pekka's on his last legs. He's been great for years, but he's not what he used to be. And that happens. Father Time's going to get everybody at some point. And then, Matt Duchene, the Preds fans convinced themselves that he's going to come in and he's going to be the guy to deliver us a cup. It's evident that's not happening. And you've got a lot of bad contracts. Like, Ryan Johansson is not playing up to his price tag. The only guy, as far as offensively that's you could get a lot for, I feel like, is Philip Forsberg. Roman Yossi's valuable, but he has that no trade clause. I think you could get a good amount for Ekholm. But I think you're in the stage now where you've got to rebuild. You got to try to get some draft picks. You got to try to get some top tier prospects. And I would hate to see Forsberg go, but it almost makes too much sense to me, because that could really, streamline that rebuild with the value that a team would give for a guy like Forsberg.
The one consistent with the Nashville Predators has been their defense. They've had guys like Shea Weber, Ryan Suter, Ryan Ellis. They have Roman Josi, Ekholm, and they have this young guy named Dante Fabro, who I've been keeping my eye on. But is there a chance that they can continue to keep on shelling out elite defensemen, or is that going to come to a stop?
Yeah, I think, it really depends on what they do. But I think with guys like you said, I mean, Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, Ekholm, just talking about currently they're on the roster. I think Fabro's turning into a nice piece. Looks like he has great potential. And I think that's something the Preds have been really good on, is especially defensively. But, I mean, I think that will continue, but it's in a point now, like I said, you're going to have to start trading some of these assets to try to rebuild for the future. So hopefully that's going to be something that continues. That's really going to help speed that up. But you've got to get goal scorers too. And the thing is, around the league, I don't think Victor Arvidsson is regarded to as an elite winger, But in Nashville, people act like he's a Philip Forsberg. They act like he's an Alex Ovechkin. And Victor Arvidsson just isn't, man. He's not.
Well, I mean, yeah, for the people who are listening in Las Vegas, let me give a Golden Knights example. I mean, it's kind of similar to what's going on with guys like Jonathan Marchessault, guys like Riley Smith. They're guys who are elite here in Las Vegas. But if you ask the rest of the NHL, they would probably say, yeah, they're good, but they're not elite. It's kind of similar to that kind of tier. Right. Absolutely. And as we're talking about Tennessee sports here on the Sports Angle with Chase Hoke from Tennessee Talk, I am your host, Rachiele. We're going to stay in Nashville, but we're going to move over to baseball. And there has been discussion about MLB expansion, but there has been a news report that if the Oakland Athletics don't get that brand new stadium, if the Oakland Athletics don't get that shiny new, $500 million stadium that they want, they could go someplace else. They could relocate somewhere else. And I made an argument on this show that if they don't go to Las Vegas, which has been the odds-on favorite to go there, that Nashville could be an alternative, being in downtown Nashville. What do you think about the possibility of, if they don't get an expansion team, having an Oakland A's team relocate to Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great. I think Nashville is poised to get an MLB team at some point. Now, I'm not sure what that's going to do with the AAA team, but whether you get that through an expansion draft or a team relocating like the Oakland A's, I think it just makes sense. As much as the city has grown and as much as people do love baseball here in the state of Tennessee, I think it'll be great. Now, there's going to be a lot of people are going to be conflicted, because there's a lot of Cardinals fans here and a lot of Braves fans. And me personally, I'll support whatever team comes to Nashville. But the Atlanta Braves are always going to be dear and true to my heart.
I understand that 1,000%. I'm a Cubs fan, so if the Oakland Athletics did move to Las Vegas, I'd still love the Cubs, but show support for the Las Vegas Athletics or whatever they call them. Of course. And with Nashville, there was breaking news that came out of the auto racing world. For the first time in 10 years, NASCAR is going to have a race on the schedule. And it's not going to be the super speedway this time. It's not, and it's going to be a different track, a different circuit with Nashville. So what is your reaction out there being in Tennessee of NASCAR and IndyCar for the first time in 10 years being put back on the schedule?
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm anxious to see how it's going to work out. I know the track, I believe it's in Lebanon, Tennessee. It's a suburb of Nashville, not too far. It's a nice track, but I don't think it's going to hold as many people, as you'll see in, far eastern Tennessee and Bristol. I think it's huge for the middle Tennessee area. It's going to attract a lot of tourism because I'm going to tell you, NASCAR has a following. A lot of people, they love themselves some NASCAR. And I think it's great for the state. I think it's great for the city. And I'm excited for it, man. I think it'll be fun.
It definitely should be a lot of fun. And for the people who love NASCAR, they're definitely going to love having a race out there in Nashville. I'm a Formula One guy, but I'll leave it at that. So when it comes to Tennessee, I can't ignore it. And I couldn't do this show and talk to you if I didn't bring up the Tennessee Volunteers. They're huge in Tennessee. So their basketball program, their football program, what is their expectations heading into 2021? And more importantly, is there any player on that basketball team and or football team that casual fans should look out for?
Yeah, man, I'll go into. We'll start with basketball since March Madness is coming up. The Vols were pegged as one of the favorites, to be able to go on and run, possibly win a national championship this year. And I don't think they've quite lived up to that. Now they've struggled, but they've also shown they can compete with anybody. They beat Kansas by 20, but then you follow that up with losses to teams like Florida and Ole Miss and Auburn. They've lost to Kentucky, and usually that's okay, but Kentucky is not what they usually are this year. But Tennessee was able to get the 4 seed for the SEC tournament, get a couple buys. So you just hope they're able to get right and go on a deep tourney run, which I think they are capable of. But some guys to watch out for on the basketball team. You've got to watch out for Keon Johnson. He's a true freshman from small town here in Tennessee. He went to college or high school in Belleville. I mean, that doesn't sound like a small town, man. I don't know what to tell you. And then we got Jaden Springer, who's also another top freshman. And they're playing great. And then you have, the senior and Eve Pons. Who knows if he's going to come back next year or not since he has the eligibility. But you have John Fulkerson, who hasn't been himself. But I feel like the Vols are loaded. They have those young stud freshmen, and then they've got the experienced guys who's been there before. And it's a perfect mix. So hopefully they'll be able to go on a run, and we'll see. And then football-wise, man, there's been a lot of transfers, but a guy I like Alontae Taylor. He's a cornerback. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick or anything like that, but I could see him definitely going 3rd, 4th round. Receivers, I like Jalen Hyatt. I like him a lot. He was a true freshman last year. You got Harrison Bailey coming back, but who knows who's going to be the quarterback yet under Josh Heupel with his new offensive scheme, because you got a freshman and Caden Salter coming in. You had Hendon Hooker, who transferred from Virginia Tech. I think it's going to be Harrison Bailey. He's a highly touted.
And with about 2 minutes left, I want to also give attention to other colleges that are in Tennessee. I know they got like Tennessee Tech. I know they have schools like that. What makes Tennessee such a college town? What makes it so appealing when it comes to college athletics?
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of talent in the state. I think there is. And me and Noah joke about Vanderbilt. We can't stand them and how they're Tennessee's little brother. But when you look at that, I mean, you want to look at a baseball school. Vanderbilt keeps putting out talent when it comes to baseball. Look at Memphis with basketball. They're usually right up there with the Blue Bloods. You know, they're a good program there. The Vols football recently ain't been what it is, but you won't find a more loyal and passionate fan base. I'm telling you, like, it's crazy. And you mentioned Tennessee Tech's my alma mater. I wish they'd be good at something, but you know, maybe their time will come. You know, maybe they'll be like Murray State and get a John Morant at some point. You know, but there's just a lot of talent in the state. There really is.
And, you know, it's always good to shout out, you know, schools that are kind of, you know, under the radar, like here in Las Vegas, the College of Southern Nevada, go Coyotes over there. So with less than 45 seconds left, I want you to tell everyone here in Las Vegas about Tennessee Talk. What is it and where can they find it?
Absolutely. So Tennessee Talk's a podcast that started with just two best friends in college talking sports. And it was kind of like, hey, we should start a podcast. And we've been doing it for over 3 years. You can find us on Facebook, Tennessee Talk. You can find us on Instagram at TN Talk Pod and Twitter at TN Talk Pod. We go live every Wednesday night, 7:30 Central. We'd love for you to check us out.
And I will definitely give you a plug and say, if you ever need Titans, Volunteers, Predators, if you need information about Tennessee sports, definitely go check out Tennessee Talk. And we're going to go to break here on the Sports Angle. When we come back, I'm going to do our Vegas report, get into the Las Vegas Raiders. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Angle, live in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. I'm your host, Rachiele. Let's get back into it. Now, our Vegas report. We're going to focus on the Las Vegas Raiders for tonight. There has been NFL cuts. There has been NFL trades. There have been NFL players getting signed. But the Raiders have been mainly on the selling side of it. They let go of Richie Incognito. They've let go of Gabe Jackson. They traded away Trent Brown. They have gotten rid of LaMarcus Joyner. He's on their dead cap now. I want to focus on one side of the ball that I believe the Raiders really need to focus on. And the wide receiver position, I'm not sold on Henry Ruggs. I've said this for the last 8 months. I am not sold on the kid from Alabama. I understand that he's fast. I understand that he doesn't have terrible hands. But you need to understand that doesn't matter who your quarterback is, who your running back is, who your offensive line is. They need to figure out the number one wide receiver. Because to me, it's not Ruggs, it's not Renfro, it's not Edwards. Those guys are young. They've got potential. But I don't see the Raiders being this team that can rely on a young trio to get the job done at wide receiver. Now, who do I believe the Raiders could go after? Well, that's very simple. There are 4 wide receivers, and I'm kind of going to break these up into 4 different tiers. Tier number 1, you go all in, and you go get Kenny Golladay from the Detroit Lions. You pay the money, and you go get, in my opinion, the second best wide receiver on the free agency market after Allen Robinson. Kenny Golladay has it all. He has the hands. He has the route running. He has those abilities to get up and get the ball when he has it put in his possession. Kenny Golladay would definitely be a number 1 wide receiver. Really, for the first time since Amari Cooper, the Raiders would have somebody that they could put the ball up and they would trust him to go get it. That's tier number 1. Tier number 2 is you go get a guy that would be a number 2 someplace else, but he could be a number 1 with the Las Vegas Raiders. Understand that John Brown with the Buffalo Bills, he is not terrible. He's not great. He's not one of the best in football. But what do the Raiders need? They need dependability. They need somebody that can go out and get touchdowns at a decent rate. John Brown, in my opinion, if you sign him to a 1-year deal, would be Nelson Aguilar 2.0. You're giving him a chance. You're coming to the Raiders, and we're going to see what you've got. I like to call it a 1-year, show me what you got type of deal. That's tier number 2. The next tier is what I like to call bringing in a gap, bringing in a filler, bringing in players that are a number 2 wide receiver with the Raiders, having them be alongside Henry Ruggs and have the potential to be a number 1 if they play out of their mind. And that's an Allen Lazard with the Green Bay Packers. That could be someone like potentially maybe a player like Marvin Jones from the Detroit Lions. There are plenty of talent on that side of the ball that the Raiders could have be a number 2 alongside Ruggs, but could transform into a number 1 if Ruggs starts to struggle. And then the 4th tier, I wouldn't recommend it, but the 4th tier is that you build from the draft. You go get an Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. You go get a Rondale Moore from Purdue. Maybe you go out and get a Kadarius Toney from Florida. You draft a wide receiver, you team them up with Ruggs, with Renfro, with Edwards, and you have one of the youngest core wide receiver groups in the NFL. Now, I'm going to ask all of you, all the people who are watching in Las Vegas, all the people that are watching around the world, what tier would you have? Would you go for tier number 1, go for the best of the best in Kenny Golladay? Tier number 2, get a number 2 and make him a number 1 like a John Brown. The next tier, you go and get a number 2 wide receiver to pair with Ruggs like an Allen Lazard, like a Marvin Jones. Or tier number 4, you go and get a wide receiver in the draft. What option would you make? Let us know on social media at The Sports Angle, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment down below what option you would make. Now, the second part of this question about the wide receiver position. Do you bring back Nelson Aguilar? Do you bring back a guy who had some productivity last year in Las Vegas? He didn't make as many drops as he did in Philly. He didn't make a lot of mistakes like he did with the Eagles organization. Does John Gruden and Mike Mayock trust Nelson Aguilar enough to give him a long-term deal? Because you have to remember, they were having Nelson Aguilar play on that, give me what you got, show us what you have, and we'll see what your contract looks like next year. When wide receivers are put in that position, they tend to ball out. When wide receivers are being put on that 1-year deal, 1-year option, they play out of their mind to get that money. So with the Raiders, should they bring back Nelson Aguilar? I would say no if you're going to go get Kenny Golladay. I would say no if you're going to go get maybe an Allen Lazard, because those guys would be able to replace the production of what Nelson Aguilar did with the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's also talk about the fact that they could maybe go get some offensive linemen to help them out as well. Why does no one focus on the fact that when they were in Oakland, when they were in LA, when they went back to Oakland, when they moved to Las Vegas, their offensive line has been a key part of that. When they won their world championships in the 70s, when they won it in the early 80s, they had good offensive line to help with Marcus Allen, to help with Jim Plunkett. Yes, they did have good talent around them, but you had to build an offensive line to make it work. And right now, unless you maybe go out and get a Jalen Mayfield from Michigan, maybe a trade up and you go get a Penny Sewell from Oregon, I don't know if the Raiders are willing to spend as much money in this free agency on offensive line. They went and got Colton Miller in the draft. They have had guys like Robert Gallery from the draft. They have gone out in the past and used first-round picks on offensive linemen before. So I'm not saying that they won't spend a first-round pick on an offensive lineman. I'm not saying they won't spend a first-round pick on a wide receiver. What I am telling you is that the Raiders need to fix those two situations on the side of the ball before they address the quarterback. They need to fix that side of the ball before they realize that they need Mariota or Carr to be their quarterback. Because what the Raiders cannot do, as we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders here on the Sports Angle, what the Raiders absolutely 100% cannot do is figure out the quarterback situation first, then address the offensive line. They cannot pick Mariota and then try to go get a wide receiver, because by that point, it would be too late. By that decision, it would already have been time's up. The offensive lineman you could have gotten in free agency will be off the board. The wide receiver that you could have gotten to help Carr / Mariota, they're most likely going to be taken by that point. So take it from my advice. My angle is that if the Raiders really want to help, if the Raiders really want to fix their situation, they need to address their number one wide receiver, and they need to build back up their offensive line before they decide if they are going to make the decision on the quarterback. Because the quarterback is a fourth issue with the Raiders. The quarterback position is something that they need to put on the back burner for now. Go getting a defensive back matters. Getting a wide receiver matters. Getting an offensive line, protecting that meat wall matters. The quarterback position does not. And I will say this proudly. I will say this as straight in the face as I can. If John Gruden and Mike Mayock don't fix this situation, if they do not get a Kenny Golladay, if they don't bring in offensive tackles like Orlando Brown from Baltimore, then I will not be shocked if they get their release papers after this year. I would not be shocked if Al Davis, he had a heart-to-heart conversation with Mark Davis in a dream and said, those two guys are ruining my organization. They're ruining my franchise. Get rid of them now. My angle, fix the wide receiver, fix the offensive line, fix the defensive back before you even consider the quarterback position. We're going to be back here on the Sports Angle. We're going to continue our sports conversation. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. welcome back to the Sports Angle, live in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. I am your host, Rachiele. Let's get back into it. The Pac-12 championship here in Las Vegas, the Mountain West championship here in Las Vegas, the Big West championship here in Las Vegas, and the West Coast championship here in Las Vegas. Now, college basketball might not think of the first thing that comes into your mind when it comes to college basketball. But understand that when it comes to championship games, the Pac-12 is one of the best. Understand that the Mountain West brings in people. I went to the West Coast championship game, BYU versus Gonzaga, had a great time. There were plenty of people who went to the West Coast championship because why not? BYU and Gonzaga would be a great matchup to watch. The reason why college basketball appeals to Las Vegas is because of the money. It appeals because of the fact that college basketball and high school basketball attributes to so much of the culture here in Las Vegas. I mean, if you go for a drive, you're going to see kids in their front of their house shooting hoops. If you go to your local recreational center, you're going to see people playing 5-on-5 pickup. You're going to see 1v1 to 21. I mean, heck, you go to any park prior to 2020, and you would see kids, teenagers, adults play 1v1 out there on the blacktop. College basketball, NBA, high school basketball, they all have a big role to play here in Las Vegas. But let's go back to what we're talking about here, and that is the college basketball championship games here in Las Vegas. As we're doing our Vegas report here on the Sports Angle, I'm your host, Rachiele. The Pac-12 is considered a group of six. The Pac-12 is considered a Power 5 in college football. But I want everyone to understand when it comes to Pac-12 basketball, outside of that run that Oregon had a while ago, there really hasn't been a dominant force in the Pac-12 when it comes to college basketball. USC gets a good amount of talent. UCLA gets a good amount of talent. I already talked about Oregon. Washington has had #1 overall picks very recently. So yes, there is a good amount of talent that comes out of the Pac-12, but there is no definitive #1, and that's what makes the Pac-12 tournament at T-Mobile Arena so popular. That is what makes being at that game so intriguing, because of the fact that you could see UCLA win that tournament and lock themselves in. You could see USC win that tournament and lock themselves in. Maybe you'll see Oregon lock themselves in. I'm a University of Utah guy. All right, that's been a team of mine for the last 15 years. And maybe once in a while, University of Utah would make a successful run. The point I'm making is that the Pac-12 might not be that powerful. They might not be the most impactful, but they're fun to watch. Like the West Coast Championship, I went to it, BYU versus Gonzaga, but let's not forget that they had St. Mary's. Let's not forget that they have a good amount of talent in the WCC. Pepperdine, there is talent like Loyola Marymount. College basketball here, when it comes to tournament time, you get to see the best of the best in the West Coast play here in Las Vegas. And for the record, their comeback, Gonzaga against BYU, was amazing. Getting to see Gonzaga versus BYU, getting to see Gonzaga keep up their undefeated streak was great. I was happy to see it. It was good to watch. And more importantly, I want to see if Gonzaga can go all the way. I want to know if Gonzaga has what it takes to get the job done. But what about you? Do you believe that Gonzaga has what it takes to win the March Madness tournament? Do you think for the first time since a UNLV, we will see a West Coast team win the tournament? Do you think for the first time since UCLA, we're going to see a West Coast team get all the way to the Final Four, contend for the championship game? Because the West Coast has been relatively bare in terms of appearances in the Final Four as of late. There has been a lack of having a West Coast team be on top of the podium saying, we are the king of the mountain. We are the best of the best. And I want to see that happen again. We have had Gonzaga, UCLA, Utah. There are teams like that. What about the Mountain West? How about UNLV? How about UNR? How about San Diego State? What about Boise State? How about the fact that the Mountain West is going to have multiple teams be in the tournament this year? Boise State, San Diego State, Utah State, a trio of Mountain West teams going in the tournament. UNLV, that's not going to matter. UNR, a bit of a letdown, I will say. But to have San Diego State, Boise State, and Utah State have a chance of getting into the tournament, I'm happy to see that. The Mountain West is on a resurgence in college basketball. It feels like it was 10 years ago when you had Kawhi Leonard in San Diego State, when you had University of Utah, TCU, you had BYU, New Mexico. You had all of these teams competing in the Mountain West for that title. It feels good. Now, to give you a comparison, I have been to the Mountain West Championship game. I've been there a couple of times, and it is fun to see the best teams in the Mountain West go up against each other. I remember one year Nevada Reno had to go up against UNLV. I intentionally went on that day just to see what UNLV and what UNR would do to each other. Turns out University of Reno put a whooping on UNLV, but it was fun to see. I sat around courtside. I got to see a good view of the game, and it was a real fun experience to see the two best teams in Nevada go up against each other in college basketball. Now, I'm going to turn this to you, the people who are listening right now. Depending on what conference you watch, if you're up there in Minnesota, if you're a big fan of the Big Ten, you have a great advantage of watching one of the best tournaments in college basketball. Let's say that you're down in the South, you're in Texas, and you're watching the Big 12 title. You have Oklahoma, Baylor, Kansas, Oklahoma State, TCU, you name it. The Big 12 has a successful tournament. How about the person we talked to earlier in the show? What if you're in Tennessee and you have the SEC tournament? Oh, I mean, let's not forget the Texas A&M, Georgia, Kentucky. There's all these really good teams. Tennessee is there. There are Florida. So much talent. Alabama as well. That's in the SEC in college basketball. It's always fun to watch. But the one matchup I always watch, the one tournament I can't turn away from, and I want to know if you feel the same, is the Big East tournament. It doesn't matter that the Big East has lost talent over the years. It doesn't matter that the Big East has lost some form of prestige over the last couple of years. Seeing Syracuse go up against Georgetown at Madison Square Garden is just something that always fascinates me. To see St. John's go up against Seton Hall at MSG is amazing. And I could be an outlier here. I could be in the minority, but out here on the West Coast, I will have my eyes peeled to the television set to watch the Big East tournament out there at Madison Square Garden. I mean, can anyone think of a more iconic venue to have college basketball than Madison Square Garden? Because I can't. So regardless if it's the Big 10, the Big East, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC, heck, it could even be a school like the Mountain West. Understand that college basketball has a big presence, and out there at the sports books, it brings in a lot of money to people here in Las Vegas. It brings money to the casinos, and more importantly, it allows people like myself to bet on college basketball games starting at 9 a.m. in the morning up until 10 p.m. at night. There are people at the sports book that are putting their money down and watching the best college basketball games of the day. So this is the Sports Angle. Follow us on social media at the Sports Angle Radio on all platforms. Where if you're here on YouTube, click the subscribe button down below, hit the like button, turn on the notifications. You'll be aware of all shows we have. Tomorrow, we are going to be uploading this to our YouTube channel, and then Friday will be Facebook Live, because Friday will be our MLB breakdown, the finale, AL West, NL West. Be a lot of fun. Stay tuned for that. This is the Sports Angle. I am your host, Rachiele. So long, everyone.